Are you ready to boost your confidence when selling so you're able to close more deals? Nikki Roush will show you how to build a foundation of skills and a mindset that creates sales success without feeling pushy or salesy and without fear of rejection. She is a sales strategist and coach with more than 25 years of sales experience and is master certified in neuro-linguistic programming. This is a radically different approach to selling. It's a no sleaze, no slime, and no stress approach to building your business. This is Sales Maven. Here's Nikki. Welcome, and thank you for listening to the Sales Maven Show. I'm your host, Nikki Roush, your own personal sales maven, here to offer you tips, techniques, and strategies to master that sales conversation. Today's episode is a special episode. It's an on-air coaching call with one of our very own Sales Maven Society members and her business partner. This is the first time I'm doing an on-air coaching call with multiple people, so I feel super honored that they said yes. I want to welcome to the show Kateri Gabriele and Roxanne Holhous. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you both here. So why don't we first start off with some introductions so people get to hear a little bit about who you are and your business. Kateri, do you want to go first? Tell us a little bit about your background and also about the business.
Sure. My name is Kateri Gabriele, and I am a nurse, as is Roxanne. And we used to work together in a community college, and that's where we started our long-term friendship and business partnership, which Roxanne will tell you more about.
Awesome.
Hi, and I'm Roxanne Holhous. And as Kateri said, we are both lifelong nurses. And we've sort of carved a pathway in nursing where we saw an opportunity to go into business together. So friendship and business partners. And our business is called Sim to Grow. And what we've done in our business is created a simulated medication administration training system that is intended for use in nursing schools. And the purpose of our system is to teach nursing students the really, really critical skill of safely giving medications. So this is something that they learn as part of their nursing school training. And then they go out, obviously, as licensed nurses. And this is one of the biggest jobs that nurses have. So our business is centered around how to teach nursing students how to do that job safely.
Well, that's amazing. And thank goodness that the both of you have decided to do this. I think all of us who are ever on the receiving end of medication being given to us, like, thank goodness there's somebody out there teaching them how to do it properly. So thank you, both
Absolutely.
of you. Now, tell me, how long have you had your business?
So the idea for the business really started many years ago, but in terms of the official business, we developed our LLC in March of 2015.
Okay. All right, good. Well, let's talk about how I can be of service today. What would be useful to both of you as you continue to grow your business?
So the one thing that we really wanted some help and we need some help on is building a strategy where we can have a consistency in our sales. So as we look at the calendar year, and thinking about predicting income and all of those things that go with having a small business, consistent year-round sales. The nature of our product is such that it's not something that I need to go and purchase this once a month, or so we're trying to figure out a way to develop that consistent sales strategy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So having a pretty extensive background selling into education myself, one of the things that we know is that education has a buying cycle, right? They have certain periods of time where they either are getting money and they're ready to spend it, or they're coming up on the end of their budget year and they have to spend it.
Right.
Is that what you guys have been running into as well?
Absolutely.
Okay. Right. And we've had that experience, right?
Yeah.
Because both at one point were in that education system. So we definitely understand that. And then I think the other piece for this with us is that, we recognize educational conferences as a place to go and get out there and to promote. In some ways, though, we're a bit of prisoners of those conference calendar schedules, right? So there's a couple of large conferences that we go to during the year. And so we have these sort of dry spells, and then we go to a conference, and then we have this surge of business, or at least of interest. And then that kind of withers away, and then we're dry for a little bit until there's another conference. So it's almost like those two calendars, that's our struggle, is we'd like to be able to sort of spread our business and spread our effort out a little more uniformly across the calendar year.
Okay. So that makes me wonder, have you considered doing some virtual summits that are outside? And maybe it's something that you put on. And I don't know if do you know what I mean when I say a virtual summit?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, Kateri, you want to go ahead and describe some of our latest initiatives?
Well, based on some of your feedback from our Facebook group, we went ahead and had some training sessions that we had reached out to people who had been to face-to-face conferences with us in the past, and we invited them to come and learn more about Meds to Grow. And we got quite a few interested people, and actually somebody is in the process of, trying to convince their finance people to purchase from that. So that was a wonderful suggestion for me.
Okay, good. So now I'm kind of repeating myself to you, right? Like, okay, well, have you done a virtual summit? And you're like, you already gave me that idea, Nikki. So I love that. And I will say that, and I think if I'm remembering right, Kateri, when we were messaging about this, that the suggestion was, this is a way for you to demonstrate your product. And I would say that's something I would encourage you to do on a regular basis, is have some like demonstration times set up where you're inviting people. So whether you do it once a month or you do it every 2 weeks, or maybe at some point you're doing it every week, that you're constantly like filling that funnel of people who can get in front of it, see it, and then have that like next logical step. Not every one of them who come, well, first of all, not everyone who signs up is going to come. That's true. The nature of how that works. And then the people who come, it's like finding the golden client inside there, like what you did with this person who now has put this in front of their purchasing department. So being consistent about it would be something that I would encourage you to do, because you don't have control over when the conferences happen, and you can't control their budget cycles. Those are the kind of things that are outside of your control. But I do have another totally off the topic idea, but I want to see if you have any comments or questions about what we're talking about here, is like doing these more consistently, these demonstrations.
Yes, we are actually have some scheduled for next month. So we're going to probably do them every other month. Okay,
good. And then it's just a matter of like continuously putting people in front of them. And even people who said, I'm not interested right now, it's okay to continue to invite them, because things may change and they might be interested in 2 months from now, right? Like,
oh, good to know.
Continuing to put this in front of them and give them the opportunity to do it. The other super kind of random idea that I have, and I'm wondering about, because the way that Roxanne had positioned initially when you were talking about having a more consistent like sales flow or structure or process, is there an opportunity for you to have some type of maybe like subscription model or something that's like a reoccurring payment that comes in every month? Because that's another way. And this would, this might be like something that's in addition to what you're already offering now, but having some like that reoccurring payment structure. So that's going to help balance out your sales a little bit in those like dry times that Roxanne had referred to.
So I'll speak to this one a little bit, because it's interesting, because this market, right? This sort of software education market. And that is a pretty common model, that there's a subscription, and that you pay a subscription fee. And one of the things that we think sets our system apart and draws customers to us is that we don't have a subscription model, that this is a purchase of the system. It's a one-time purchase, and then the program owns it. And so in doing so, they don't have to then transfer any of those costs onto their students. And we feel like that's really important. We've kind of identified this niche market of smaller schools, very much like a community college type school. And we know from having been in that was our market, that budgets are very tight and students don't have a lot of money. And we also know that going to nursing school, everything that you have to pay for the program, all of the books and things like that, it's very expensive. So we feel like it's really important to maintain that one-time cost. Therefore, you don't have to put any cost onto your student. It totally makes sense what you're saying, because then you're generating a predictable amount of revenue on a monthly basis. But I think, to balance that with that selling point that we have, that you buy this, you own it, that's it. So I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
So I love that that's your selling point, that you buy it, you own it. There's no additional cost to the students. And this is something that makes you unique in the marketplace amongst your competitors. My idea though is more around the idea of like, what's the next step up? So they get it, they own it. Like, what else could you provide that is separate? So this piece that you're selling, is it standalone? It's a one and done sale. And maybe it's for nurses once they're out of school. Is there a place for them to go to continue to get some ongoing education, or just have access to, both of your brilliant brains and all of your experience around nursing? Or is there some other piece that does allow for this reoccurring income? And that might be like a separate, I would say, just based on your answer, it needs to be a separate offer, something that doesn't necessarily isn't attached to that one sale, because I don't want to take away your unique advantage of this one and done. There's no additional cost structure. And oftentimes people do want more from you. And so what is that next step? What's that like? What is the more for them?
So that's interesting you should say that. We have been contemplating what our next step would be, and it's probably an inventory system, so that they can manage, how many IV pumps they have and how many beds and which one needs to be fixed all the time. So maybe that one can be a monthly subscription that's, reasonably priced, because our target audience of community colleges are not that affluent, but, maybe a lower price point, but an ongoing price.
Yeah.
So, I like that.
And again, it's not that you have to change your model completely. It's just as a way to even out the consistent flow of revenue into the business. The other point that you go back to with education is like, it's always great to have these, $3 million, $5 million a month in sales. And then, you get into these months where they're not, education is not buying, they're not spending money. And now you have these like dry spells, but you have to figure out how to make that $3 million. And I don't know if I'm even in your guys' ballpark as far as sales. I know in education, for me, a $3 million sales month into education was a great month. And so, that kind of has to sustain you for the next 3 months until we get back into these new schools have started their new budget cycle. Because the thing about schools is they don't have consistent, they don't all run January through December. Some of them run, what is it? It's July through June.
July through June, I think, is the typical model. Actually, you're right. Yeah.
And then the occasional October to October.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So never, not always knowing what is their buying signal. And that's another way to kind of try to balance out the revenue that comes into the business, is that you have to, have multiple schools bringing money into the business. The other piece that I'm wondering is it just the two of you selling? What's the sales process?
So it is just the two of us. So when you talk about small business, this is, the smallest of small businesses.
Yeah.
We're and I think really, and this is where with Kateri having joined the society, and for us this year has really been a jumping off point of how do we go from this sort of very small, like cottage industry. We want to be business people, and we want to do this. We need to adopt these really true business strategies and a business model.
Mm-hmm.
It is just the two of us. We both have full-time jobs in addition to this business. And so trying to figure out, how do we grow this business, but at the same time, we're not at a point where we can hire employees. I mean, we don't have the consistent sales. So how do we balance that, growing our business, but also knowing that it's a small business and we both have other full-time commitments. So that's a challenge.
So my thought around that is, have you, maybe you're already aware of this, and I'm totally fine with you being like, no, Nikki, we don't like that idea. But I know in education at the manufacturer, when I was working at the manufacturer level, one of the things that we would often do, so when at the manufacturer level, which I think of you guys as a manufacturer, like this is your product. Now I was selling hardware, so maybe you think of yourself a little bit differently, but and then a lot of times, we were selling our product to a distributor and then to a dealer. But one of the other ways that we would utilize resources, because, there were, when I was at Hitachi, there were, I don't know, 4 of us that managed the whole United States. Like that's not a huge sales force selling into these markets. So we would sell to distributors, we would sell to dealers, and then we would work with rep firms. And a rep firm oftentimes has multiple lines of products that they rep, and they get paid based on sales. So they only get paid when something sells, right? So it's a commission-based structure. And then you have to decide how much of your profit are you willing to give up for them to go out. But the nice thing about these rep firms in the industry is that they have a lot of relationships. They have a lot of relationships with the right people, and they're more locally based, right? So they might cover a state, or maybe they have multiple reps that work for them that cover a certain territory. And by working with a rep firm, it's just like it's an extension of your sales team. Are they as good as your sales team? No, because they have a lot of products and lines pulling them in different directions. But they can open doors for you that sometimes you can't open for yourself because they have these relationships.
Yeah. So really, is it almost like it's like a freelance sales network, a freelance team. So you're contracting them. I had no idea that anything like that existed in terms of these firms where you could bring somebody on like that. Kateri, were you aware?
I was not. I have considered, reaching out to some of the vendors that, sell a bunch of different products, and even products that are in competition with each other. They're like a general catalog of simulation equipment. Mm-hmm. But this is fascinating.
Because I think, as you said too, the contacts, the network, and even if that's the initial foot in the door, and then maybe we take over the sale or potential sale at the point where you need that higher level of expertise, you need that granular detail, but doing that legwork, right? That on the ground legwork, which is where we get stuck, I think, because we aren't able to commit 40 hours a week to it, or, what that sort of thing. So I think that's a really, that is not anything that I had ever even thought of before.
Yeah. The idea, and I used to actually, so in a way, like as a regional sales manager, which was what my role was at that manufacturer level, is my job was to essentially manage the rep firm and be their contact. So I would do things like I would actually go out, like physically fly into the location, and we would do ride days together, and they would set up a bunch of appointments for me. Like sometimes we'd have, 7 demonstrations in a day, and we would just drive from one school to the next school to the next school. Right. And, they would have these meetings set up, and I would just go in and basically do the dog and pony show. And I'm writing the coattails of all the relationship and all the rapport that they have with these clients. And it's an opportunity for me to put my product in front of these decision makers. And then a lot of times, any kind of questions or a lot of that, like, well, what about this and what about that after the fact, that would all be funneled through the rep firm. So that person would be getting those types of questions. And of course, they have access to me to reach out, if they need some additional support or answers. But then let's say that the school says, well, we want to see this product one more time. A lot of times I wouldn't have to go back out. I would just send like the demonstration and I would sometimes send a presentation to the rep firm. They would then have that, and they would go out and do the demo for me. So it would, like you said, it's like an extension of your sales force that it's kind of like salespeople for hire, but without having to bring them on as staff. And now you're not paying, benefits, and it's like they're 1099 contractors.
Right. That's a model, honestly, that we probably could accommodate. Even doing, like you said, going out, taking a day or 2 days and doing that, get there, go see 5, 6, 7 schools, do a demo, because that's exactly what we need to do, is get in front of our potential customers, which we're able to do at conferences, which is why we love conferences. But Kateri and we were just having a conversation this morning. The audience, and I don't know, Nikki, how much experience you have with this, but the audience at a nursing education conference, in a lot of ways, a lot of the faculty that go, yes, they're there for an educational conference, but it's a little bit of a mini vacation. And I don't know always that you're getting their complete attention when they're going around at the vendor tables and things like that, where this, you're in their place, right? And they're focused on what you're doing, and you've been invited there. So yeah.
And we did it all. Like, I think one year I actually counted, I did 100 conferences, 100 trade shows in a year. Which I can honestly say now that if I never either attend or work a trade show again for the rest of my life, I will count that as a success. Because I never.
They're stressful. They're stressful.
They're just, after, when you're doing, and I probably averaged more like 50 a year, but the one year where it was just like, like sometimes it was 4 conferences a week. It was crazy. My schedule was crazy. And it's just like, you just have no desire to stand, on those trade show floors and have people walk by. Like, so I get it. And I do think it's an important way to grow business. And so I'm not telling you don't do those. And like, there needs to be this other arm, this other extension. So and again, I don't know who would be the right rep firm for you. You're going to have to, not all rep firms are created equal, just like not all salespeople are created equal. I've worked with some amazing rep firms in the industry that I came from. And I've also worked with some real duds. My boss one time fired one of our rep firms while I was on a ride day with him, which was, let me say, that was one of the most awkward days of my career.
Yeah,
he fired him just as we were walking into a very important meeting. So he was seething like in the meeting and so angry at me. Right? Because I'm the representative of the company that just fired him. It was horrible. So, not all rep firms are created equal. And you might have to, like, what's the saying? Like, kiss a few frogs before you find a prince.
Right.
To find your right rep firm. But one of the ways to find a good rep firm is to ask when you're out meeting with these schools of, do they work with any of these types of companies? Do they have relationships with any of them? Because they'll tell you who the best ones are.
That is a strategy. Like that just was sort of a mind blowing. This whole last 10 minutes, I'm like, my mind, the wheels are turning and my mind is spinning, because I think we feel pressure because we see our business very much sort of at this place where it could potentially really explode. We've a lot of opportunities, they talk about every cloud having that silver lining, and that what's going on, unfortunately, in higher education and in the country right now, and this push to really need digital education and even digital education that can be implemented virtually. That's going on right now. And we really see an opportunity for our product here, even beyond its normal niche, right?
Yeah.
We feel this pressure like to get it out there, but at the same time, it's just the two of us. So this is like just a wow moment.
Yeah. And it could be that it turns out, you're not going to find the right like rep firm. I don't know. Some people might call them other things. We always call them rep firms. And it could be that you do go to a dealership model, that the dealers who have these, their salespeople who are physically in the locations and have these relationships with these schools, like that's another avenue to go down. You can always go down the distribution, find a good distributor of this type of equipment. But once you go to a distributor, once you go to a dealer, you're really fighting for attention. And so you have to be very careful, like and strategic, because how do you get the attention of the mindset of that salesperson when they have access to sell 50, 100 other products? And not that it's necessarily a competing product to yours, but, salespeople, like good salespeople, are driven by money and recognition. Right. And so there has to be some things in place to really get their attention. I mean, one of the things that I often did was design contests for my dealer reps and for my distributors to capture their attention, to have them more focused on talking about my product versus any of the other products in their line. So there's that piece, which is a whole nother conversation, frankly, on how to get attention at the dealer rep level. But what are your margins and all that stuff? Because how much of that are you willing to give up to get somebody's attention and have them go out and push your product? The nice thing about education, though, is that they're not usually buying, well, maybe with you guys, they're buying like one, but hopefully it's enough of a sale with a big enough margin that it makes the difference. I mean, in the industry that I come from, like, education, they weren't buying like one product, they were buying like 700 of something. So there was, some money to work with there because these were big sales.
Yeah. And I think that would be an important piece for us is, at where we are currently, I mean, it's not a high volume sale in terms of number of systems. And so that's a place where we would have to be careful. And we actually, even at some of the conferences that we've been to, we've had a little bit of inroads of people reaching out to us and saying, hey, sort of that feeling us out and, kind of partnership thing, because our system would potentially enhance or go along with something that they're marketing or selling. So some of those partnership type things, but again, you're right. Looking at the model in terms of what does that chip away from our profit margin, and
right.
If we're willing to do that, so I think that there's all of those things, and it's a challenge for us. And I think it's a part of it for us too has been this pride of ownership that we have, because we have such a passion for this space in the market and such a passion for our product. And this fear that if we sort of release it to a distributor or a dealer, will it lose some of its import and uniqueness, right? Did I say that right, Kateri? Like almost that fear of letting it go, right?
It's our baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'll tell you what my husband always yells at me when, not yells at me like in a negative way, but when we're hearing about people making decisions about money and being really attached to, he has an extensive background in sales too. So we have a very much a sales mindset in this family. And he always goes, money has no ego. And every time your ego gets in the way, you're costing yourself money. So I say that also saying like, every once in a while people are like, why don't you let other people teach your sales training, Nikki? And I'm always like, how could anybody else teach it the way that I teach it? But then I always think of Joel, my husband, saying, Nikki, money has no ego. Like get over yourself. Like what's the ultimate goal? And this comes from my NLP background, is like, what's the outcome? Like, what do you most want to have happen? Do you want more people to have access to your product so that more nurses can learn how to administer medication properly, with this idea that you will have to give up some of your control? Your baby's going to have to like spread its wings a little bit, and nobody will ever have the passion for your product, your software, and be able to describe it and sell it as effectively as you will. But you are you are each one person. So you have a 2-person team. You're working full time still as nurses. So like, what's the opportunity here? Like, would you rather have, I'm trying to think of this, like, would you rather have, 80% of $100,000, or would you rather have, 50% of 10 million?
And I think you nailed it on the head, right? Like, and that's exactly where we're sitting, is needing to figure out those strategies to move us ahead. And is it something that we can do by ourselves, or what are those other models that we can consider to really grow the business?
Yeah. Well, this was a fun conversation. I didn't know where we were going to go with it today. I loved the questions that you both had. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and allowing for listeners to kind of sit in the room with us as we have this discussion. I hope this was super useful for a listener who is maybe thinking about maybe this opened up their mind as additional ways to sell their product or service as well. So thank you both for being here. I always like to wrap up the episode with 2 questions. So this first question is for Kateri, and the question is, what's one benefit you've received as being a part of the Sales Maven Society?
Oh, thank you for asking that. I would say that it's the broad range of ways that you are able to teach sales strategies. So on the website, there's all the cool videos, in tiny little snippets that you can watch, as you're folding laundry or whatever. And then on Facebook, I love the support from the other community members, but you are, answering questions, within an hour or something like that, giving people advice on how to, better phrase their approach. And I also like that you ask us questions and say, okay, so if you receive this email, how would you respond? And then you get everybody's insight on how they would approach that. So I love the variety in your teaching methods.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that answer. All right. And then last, how can people find out more about each of you and your business, which I'm super excited for them, like Sim to Grow? How can people find you?
So really, really easy. So our website is simtogrow.com. So you'll find all of the information about us, about our business. You're able to see a video of the product being demoed and things like that. And also info@simtogrow.com.
Will you spell that for the audience?
Absolutely. So info, obviously, at sim, S-I-M, to the number 2 and grow, all one word. So info@sim2grow.com.
Well, Kateri and Roxanne, thank you so much for being here. Those of you who might have some interest in their product, maybe you have a complimentary product, maybe you're a rep firm and you'd like to reach out to them and find out more, or if you have some ideas for them on ways to open doors, please reach out and connect. All of their contact information will be in the show notes. And thank you so much, ladies, for being here. I really appreciate you. And thank you to the listener for being here with us today. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thanks for listening to Sales Maven. Visit us online at yoursalesmaven.com/maven for more resources to boost your confidence and skills.